If you're not a fan of the Hellraiser franchise, then the date February 13th, 2018 doesn't mean much of anything to you. But if you are a fan of the franchise, that date marks the day that you'll finally get to see Hellraiser Judgment. I was gonna review this movie just like any other horror movie, but after doing about 5 minutes of research, I realized that it's unlike any other horror movie. The road it had to travel just to get made is insane by any standard, and I think that says a lot more than any review ever could. So buckle up, you're about to hear the story of Hellraiser Judgment. It's a tale as old as time in the horror movie industry. One production company holds the rights to a franchise, like Dimension holding the rights to Hellraiser, for example, and to retain those rights, they need to make a movie in said franchise every few years. Over the years, Dimension has gotten around this by shoehorning Pinhead into a previously written script. But with 2011's Hellraiser Revelations, the 9th film in the Hellraiser franchise, Dimension had Gary J. Tunnicliffe, the series' makeup designer since Hellraiser 3, write an original script set in the universe. The movie came out with little fanfare, and it's safe to say that it wasn't a hit with fans or critics. As Tunnicliffe bluntly put it, "I wrote a traditional Hellraiser story with Revelations, and I got raped by the fans." He went back to the drawing board and came up with a new script in the Hellraiser universe called Judgment. But after the poor reception of Revelations, he didn't think he'd be allowed to make another movie in the franchise. So like any other filmmaker would, he cut out Pinhead and all of his Cenobite buddies, and he took the script to Kickstarter. Judgment will be a professionally made, full-length feature film shot in Los Angeles, the page reads, and made in the same way as 99% of regular movie productions. So far, so good, right? But then you have to ask yourself, what makes Hellraiser Judgment different? For the first time, the Kickstarter promises, Gary J. Tunnicliffe will be allowed complete freedom of creativity. Creativity that has been feared by certain studio executives, producers, and directors over years for being too intense or too bizarre, or for having ideas that were deemed going too far for the public by people out of touch with horror audiences. So yeah, Tunnicliffe is an edgy dude, but unfortunately the Kickstarter was only able to pull in about $9,000, a far cry from its $195,000 goal, and the dream of Judgment getting made seemed to die. But as time went on, Dimension's clock to produce another movie in the Hellraiser franchise kept ticking, so Tunnicliffe pitched the Judgment script to them 3 different times, and he was rejected 3 different times. And real quick, I want to point out that this franchise went from having itself shoehorned into random scripts to written as an original script, then taken out of that script and then put back into it. It is just bizarre. Anyway, after getting rejected, Tunnicliffe wrote another new script treatment to show that he just really wanted to make Judgment. Not that it was the only thing he could come up with. So he took this script over to Dimension and they liked it, but instead of agreeing to make that movie, he said, no, I want to make Judgment. Now remember that Dimension was on the clock to make a new Hellraiser movie, and after they were forced to shoot Revelations in less than 2 weeks, they were getting antsy. So after all of these failed pitches and negotiations, they told Tunnicliffe to go ahead and write Judgment. Since way more than 1% of this franchise seems like it works differently than a normal movie, there was of course a condition. If Dimension didn't like the script Tunnicliffe produced, he would have to direct Enter Darkness for free. Tunnicliffe accepted the deal, and after many rewrites, Dimension didn't use their get out of paying the director free card and let him direct Hellraiser Judgment. Remember that Tunnicliffe felt his last script was written for fans of the series, so for this one he decided to do things a little different, saying, I'm not going to try and appease the fans anymore. I'm going to make a film for me, and I have a very strong idea visually on where I want to go with the story, and it's going to be very different. I'm going to make a food for me and offer everybody a bite. But after all the hoops this movie had to jump through, the controversy did not end there. As surprising as this might be, Pinhead was played by Doug Bradley for 8 out of the already made 9 Hellraiser films, and Tunnicliffe wanted him to come back and play Pinhead for Hellraiser Judgment. Bradley refused, and honestly, I can't blame him. And even after being begged to return by Tunnicliffe, he again refused since Dimension wouldn't let him read the script without signing an NDA. Tunnicliffe moved on and gave the role to Paul T. Taylor. Tunnicliffe himself played the new character called the Auditor, and he even got Heather Langenkamp to play a small role in the film, and that's pretty surprising and honestly pretty cool. So here we are almost 7 years later, and Hellraiser Judgment is finally being released. Now Lionsgate sent me over an early copy, and I have to say I actually really liked it. Tunnicliffe put it best when he said, I know we can never make a film as great as the first 2 Hellraisers, but I think we have a fun script here and an opportunity to give you all something that feels a little familiar, a little different, completely terrifying, and is a worthy part of the Hellraiser canon. And honestly, I think that's a perfect description for what Judgment is. The special effects and makeup are easily on par with the first 3 Hellraiser movies, and I love that Pinhead takes a backseat as the Auditor's boss who answers to an angel from heaven. The Assessor, a character who dresses the stories typed up by the Auditor in children's tears and eats them, made my stomach churn, and a scene where a man's skin is pulled from his body was seriously impressive for a direct-to-DVD movie. Honestly, I'd put this movie on the same level as Curse of Chucky. It does some really cool things to shake up the status quo of the Hellraiser universe, while also staying true to what made it cool in the first place. There's also a really cool thing that happens at the end that I kind of ruined for myself by digging too deep into the Kickstarter, but it was very effective when I saw it on screen, and I like where they're possibly going to take it if this movie gets a sequel. Now, if you've been watching my videos since August when I started doing these horror reviews, you'll know that the one thing that really gets to me with these movies is when there's a twist halfway through that you don't see coming, not because it's a good twist, but because it's so dumb and out of left field that it just isn't even plausible to you. And unfortunately, this movie has one of those, but the twist at the very end is so good that it made up for it, so this time I will give it a pass. So that is the crazy story of Hellraiser Judgment, you guys, with my little review at the end. If you like this video, you should let me know by hitting the thumbs up button, and let me know down in the comments below. I've been putting a lot of work into making sure these videos aren't getting stale, because who wants to watch a stale video? And I'd love to hear from you if you think it's working. But yeah, that's all the time I have for today. So as always, guys, my name is Jimmy Champagne, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.